Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're looking at the Kershaw Highball XL. Now, I will point out right from the start, I guess, that this is not an XL knife at all. The last time we looked at an XL Kershaw, it was the Strata, and it's massive. This is also XL, but it's only called that because it's bigger than the original Highball, which was quite a bit, which was a very small knife. All right, so this is, let me quickly get size and weight out of the way, and then we'll move into the rest of the discussion. So this is 7 and 9/16 overall. So when I say it's not big, it's not big. 3¼ inches on the blade, 4 and 5/16 closed, 3½ inches of grip area. Okay, so not huge. If you're a really big guy with big hands, then you might need to look a different, they say people with big hands need knives with big handles. So that would be applicable here. Finally, 3.86 ounces, which is okay. All right, it's not for a small, slim knife like this. You'd like to think, oh, let's go really light, so it's like hardly noticeable in pocket. But this, they didn't quite get there. There's no internal milling on the stainless, which could have perhaps saved a few fractions of ounces there. So not a large knife. In fact, it's a little on the small side, but big enough that it doesn't suck. Okay, I don't find myself feeling cramped or like I don't have enough grip area here. I don't feel like I'm under knifed much of the time. Now, mind you, this is more geared toward sort of an EDC style folder than like a tactical folder, an outdoor survival folder, or something like that. And so you have to kind of modify your expectations a little bit. And for an EDC knife, I think this is pretty okay. Now you'll notice it is a departure from the original Highball design. And if you really, really love that knife and just wanted one that was just bigger and nothing else, then you may be disappointed. I still think this is a nice looking knife, okay? And perhaps, Kershaw could have done this as a separate model altogether and still done, a Highball XL that was exactly like the smaller version. I know that smaller version was very popular. So, it made sense that they wanted to hold on to that name because the small one was popular. Price point on this, let me touch on that before we get into the rest of the video, is a little on it's like the high end of budget. Okay, so happy hour is not here quite yet for the Highball. This is a little expensive, but it's not, $55 is still solidly in the budget range. It's just, if you're looking at a bunch of titanium frame locks, you're going to find a bunch from Reich and Real Steel and stuff that are going to beat it in terms of value. All right, let's go ahead and get into the specifics of this knife in particular. And by the way, I'm aware of that, Kershaw has some appeal, and I do like this design. In fact, I like this design better than, some of the stainless steel competitors that are out there. So let's go ahead and take a look, starting with this blade. The blade is D2 steel, fairly good in terms of, overall balance. It's a flat grind. It's moderate stock. It's not super, super thin or super thick. They've done a nice big fuller here that works to deploy the blade. The only thing I'm going to complain about is the bead blasted finish. I really wish we could get away from that. And actually, I think if you use your imagination for a moment to picture this knife, but with a satin blade, that contrast created between the muted handle and the satin, I think would make it that much sharper. And I don't mean, pun intended. This could have been a little bit nicer in terms of blade finish. I'm not a fan of bead blast, especially on D2, which is not a stainless steel. So you take a steel that can already be prone to rusting and make it more prone to rusting. That's not a good move. All right. Now, apart from the bead blast, and look, I've had this for a few months. I've been using it. I've been carrying it. It's not rusting. Okay. So it's not that's a major concern unless you live in a high humidity area. If you're living in Florida or, Knoxville, Tennessee or something like that. Yeah, this might be a problem for you, but I think for most people, it's not going to be the end of the world. It could have been better. In terms of cutting performance, this is nice. I have no complaints at all. D2 is great steel for the budget market, and it holds an edge well. And this blade grind, it's moderate. It's not a super thin grind, but it's thin enough that this cuts just everything that I've had to do with it. It's done completely admirably. All right, so no complaints about performance. A couple little, a little tick for the finish on the blade that I wish that was different. All right. They've also done a nice job with the plunge grind there. There's a little bit of a smile happening, but not that bad. And you're going to get quite a bit of sharpening out of this before it becomes anything that you need to worry about. So that's the blade. Not too bad at all. Moving over to the action or the lockup and deployment. Of course, it's a stainless steel frame lock. It is on bearings, and it's funny, they call this a two-hand opening knife, and I think that's probably a benefit to those people who live in locations where you're not allowed to have a knife that can be deployed one-handed, but this can easily be deployed one-handed. The fuller is really nicely done for Spidey flick, and that's my preferred way to open the knife. The action is pretty good. You can see, all right, this is a drop shut knife. The bearings are decent. The detent is just a little bit soft. Otherwise, they've done a nice job here, and carrying the knife, using the knife, I have quite enjoyed it. It just, the detent could be just a little bit stiffer, but it's not that bad. And I'm sure there was some effort being made there because of the fact that you may put your fingers on the lock bar. And if you do, let's purposely put our fingers on the lock bar. You can see I can still open the knife pretty easily. So that's a good sign that the detent could probably, again, be a little bit stiffer. Lockup is solid. Lock bar is very accessible. Like the ergonomics of this knife overall are quite nice, right? I can easily get a hold of that fuller. I can easily Spidey flick. I can easily unlock and close the knife. So in terms of, deploying this knife and closing it, the whole thing works really, really well. And that's a real win, I think. Kershaw's got a really nice system here, and I'd like to see more knives where they forego any kind of, doesn't need a flipper tab, doesn't need anything. It can just be exactly as it is. So I think they've done a nice job in terms of deployment. It is smooth, it's on bearings, so all that stuff is good as well. From there, let's move over to the handle. Now the handle, the look of this is really nice, and I do like the chamfering they've done. I like the little bit of color with the back spacer and the over travel stop and the pivot. All of that stuff is nice. The deep carry clip that's movable is good as well, with, by the way, flush screws, which is definitely commendable. That's an oversight that a lot of companies miss there. So all that stuff is pretty nice, and overall this handle is decently well done. The one complaint I have is that, well, it's okay in hand, it's not like the most fantastic ergonomic knife I've ever felt. I feel like had they done milling internally to lighten it up and then left this, make this a very minor milling just to shape the knife rather than actually, you can see they've removed a bit of material. So that ends up making it a little bit thin at the spine and at the front, which makes it less comfortable. If they had just done 2 full slabs of stainless steel and then done this contouring just very slightly for looks, rounded these edges a little bit, it could have been a little more comfortable. And I'm probably being really nitpicky here. And again, I have to say, well, I'm being nitpicky because I want to kind of make sure you're fully informed before you buy this. I really like this knife. Like, it feels fine in hand. It just doesn't feel amazing in hand. And I'll bring in a couple of other knives that feel a little bit nicer. All right. And so the other thing, combine that thinness with the fact that it's a little small, and I end up with a knife that I wouldn't want to take this out to the bush and be like, yeah, this is going to be my survival knife. I'm going to, process wood and do that. It would get pretty uncomfortable pretty quickly in that scenario. All right. So let's bring in some comparisons, and I'm not saying all of these would be all that much better. Here is the Civivi Imperium. This happens to be the one with the gold shred CF. These are, of course, available in G10, and at the G10, with the G10, these would be very comparable knives, both in terms of price point, although I think the Civivi is a little cheaper, and in terms of overall roll. Like, this is a slim knife, it's lightweight, it's fairly small, it's kind of gentlemanly, okay? So these, I think, would be pretty direct competitors, and the Civivi, because of that nicely contoured handle, feels just a little bit better in hand. And that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say the feel of this could be slightly improved. It's not bad, but when you compare it to a knife where you go, hey, that feels pretty good, You don't really say that about the Highball. Another example, let's throw in a couple of, here's a budget-ish Kaiser. Now this is a little more, right? This is like $70. The steel over here is N690. But otherwise, these could be quite comparable. All right, similar size. The action on the Kaiser is really, really good. I'm actually working on this review as well right now, and in that review I'm going to talk about the action because it's incredible. I just thought I'd throw that in there. A more budget-friendly comparison would, of course, be the Feldspar, which with those contoured micarta handles feels great. Even the G10 version feels amazing as well. But this is how you do ergonomics on a budget knife. This is just spectacular. These are out now with a different steel. However, someone correct me if I'm wrong. The ones that I've seen, the Feldspars that I've seen that have the new steel, don't have the contoured handle. And frankly, I'd take D2 with a contoured handle that's a little more comfortable over the RWL or R2. Anyway, whatever the proprietary CGRB steel is. If you could get it with the same handle, that would be a big win, but I'm not sure that you can. But here's a good comparison, and I think these are around $45 instead of $55. What else have we got? Rat Model 1. Of course, this one is the cheap carbon fiber version, but perhaps a Rat 2 would be a little more comparable. Let me just put that back for a second, just because I think many people are familiar with the size of this. Okay. And let's grab one more other knife here. This is the Real Steel Roket, obviously Knife Nuts exclusive version. And this is a little more expensive knife as well, but I thought there is like a more budget-friendly version of this that I think goes for around $70. And, so if you're buying this, you might want to add the extra $15 and go up to something a little more substantial. So those are some comparisons for you. In the end, I think this is a pretty nice knife. I know I was a little bit nitpicky with it, but they've done a good job. It feels pretty good in hand. The price is a little higher than perhaps it should be, but it's not crazy. It's not like they're asking for $80 or something like we have some examples of CRKT doing in some of their nice, some of their more designed knives. We've seen some real misses in that regard. So I wouldn't say the price is a complete miss. The design is very good. I love the look of this knife. In terms of utility, this is pretty easy to carry. It cuts reasonably well. No, it's a little small for me, and you guys know that. So this is not going to be, my go-to EDC knife, but I'm sure for some people out there, this would be just the right size. And if you like the design as much as I do, then it would probably make sense for you to pick this up. If you look at it and you're kind of underwhelmed, well, obviously don't buy it. That would be true of practically any knife, unless it's just completely amazing. And there are some knives out there. There are some knives out there that I've said, hey, whatever you think about the initial look, you need to check this out. But this, I wouldn't go that far. This is, if you like the look, I think you'll be pleasantly, I think you'll enjoy this knife. But I would not suggest for a moment that there aren't other better options out there. In terms of what Kershaw's done here, I think it's pretty close, right? They're getting to the point where they can compete with the Real Steels and Civivis of the world, but they're still missing the target by just a little. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We will talk to you soon.